The kettle had just begun its soft whistle when I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. 40 years old, and yet, sometimes I felt older than time itself, like every second with my husband had aged me more than any calendar ever could. He was 55 now, a man who had once stirred something wild in me, but who had grown into a quiet, cold shadow of himself. His love, or what passed for it, felt like a routine he performed out of obligation. When he touched me, it was with the dullness of habit. When he kissed me, it was out of duty, not desire. He didn't see me anymore. Not really. That realization was a cold slap I tried to ignore. But it only grew louder with every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling beside a man who hadn't asked how I truly felt in years. He didn't see how I was fading, how the silence between us was swallowing me whole. And then there was Daniel. My son, my joy, my paradox. He was 21 now, back from university for the summer, his energy filling the house like sunlight through open windows. And God, how I needed that light. His laughter echoed through rooms where silence had taken root. He talked with his hands like I used to. He challenged my thoughts like I once dreamed my partner would. Being near him made me feel awake again. We had always been close. Closer than most mothers and sons, perhaps. It wasn't something I had ever questioned when he was younger. He clung to me in a way that felt like more than just childhood dependence.
He saw me.
Even as a boy, he noticed when I was tired, when I needed space, when I needed company. And now, as a man, he saw even more. He noticed the cracks in my marriage, the heaviness in my eyes. I didn't have to explain the tears I wiped away when I thought no one was watching. He simply knew. One evening, after my husband had stormed off for another solitary weekend of fishing, his latest excuse for disappearing, we were alone in the house. I had cooked his favorite meal, rosemary chicken, sweet potatoes with cinnamon, and asparagus tossed in lemon and garlic. It had become a quiet ritual between us. He always offered to help, always stood beside me, chopping vegetables or stealing bites when he thought I wasn't looking. That night, something was different. He came up behind me as I stirred the sauce, placing his hand gently on the small of my back. It was nothing overt, nothing inappropriate, but the warmth of it made me catch my breath. His touch lingered longer than it should have, and when I turned to look at him, his eyes didn't look away. I told myself it was just a moment, that I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Dinner was quieter than usual. There were no jokes, no teasing. Just glances. Lingering looks across the table that felt like static humming between us. I couldn't ignore it. My skin prickled under the weight of what wasn't being said. Afterward, we moved to the living room, wine glasses in hand. The TV played some mindless sitcom, but neither of us was really watching. I felt his presence beside me like a storm waiting to break, silent, charged, unavoidable. "Mom," he said suddenly, his voice barely louder than a whisper. I turned to him, startled. "Yes." He hesitated. "Do you ever think about starting over?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I stared at him, searching his expression. "Every day," I admitted. "But I don't know what that looks like anymore." He nodded slowly. "You've given so much to this family."
To him.
"You deserve to be seen." I blinked back the sudden sting in my eyes. "And who sees me now, Daniel?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed alone. My husband had decided to spend the weekend at his brother's, or so he claimed, and the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. My mind replayed the evening over and over. His hand on my back. The way his voice broke when he told me I deserved more. And something deep within me stirred. Something dangerous. Something real. The morning sun poured through the window, warm and insistent. I rolled over slowly, my body heavy with the weight of restless sleep and thoughts that hadn't left me alone all night. My husband hadn't come home, and for once I didn't care. There was no fear, no worry, just a numb kind of freedom that scared me more than his absence ever could. Downstairs, I heard the unmistakable sound of water. Rushing, splashing, laughter. Daniel. I rose, pulled a light robe around me, and padded barefoot to the patio doors. The summer heat was already curling through the air, wrapping the backyard in a golden haze. And there he was. Daniel stood beside the pool, shirtless, his broad back to me, sunlight glistening on his skin. He wore nothing but a pair of navy blue shorts that clung to him with every movement. His muscles rippled as he adjusted the hose, water gushing in a steady stream into the pool. He looked unreal. My breath caught before I could stop it. He turned just as I stepped outside, and his face broke into that boyish grin I had always loved. But now it held something else, an edge, a spark that wasn't entirely innocent. "Morning, sleepyhead," he called out, sweeping a wet hand through his hair. "It's already boiling," I murmured, shielding my eyes. "You've been out here long?" "Since about 8, he replied. "Figure we could cool off a little. Pool's already half full." Then, without warning, he flicked the hose at me. A spray of cold water caught my legs and the hem of my robe. I gasped, startled, then laughed despite myself. "Daniel." He shrugged with exaggerated innocence.
What?
"You look too hot." "I'll show you hot," I warned, stepping closer, but it was a weak threat. I couldn't hide my smile. I couldn't ignore the flutter in my chest or the way my eyes kept drifting back to his bare skin, his strong shoulders, the easy grace in his stance. It was wrong. Every thought that passed through my mind, but I couldn't stop them. He handed me the hose with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "So, party in the pool?" he asked, voice low, teasing. "Just you and me, Mom." The word stung. Or maybe it grounded me. But he didn't say it like a child. He said it like a man reminding me of boundaries that were already bending. "I didn't bring a swimsuit," I said, carefully, wrapping my arms around myself. He leaned back on the pool's edge, stretching out his arms, his body impossibly relaxed. "We're alone. Who needs one?" That silence returned between us again, dense, heavy, fragile. The sound of the hose filling the pool became the only thing tethering us to the moment. I looked down in my robe, damp now at the hem, clinging to my legs. Beneath it, I wore only a thin cotton nightgown. I hadn't expected company or complication. "I'll go change," I said, turning before he could see the flush creeping at my neck. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze following me. Not as a son looking at his mother, as a man looking at a woman. That thought shook me to my core, and yet it also lit something deep inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Desire.
Raw. Wild.
Uninvited. Upstairs, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. The nightgown clung to my curves, damp at the edges. I turned sideways, studying myself as if I were seeing a stranger. I wasn't young anymore, but I wasn't invisible either. Daniel had reminded me of that. I chose a simple black one-piece swimsuit. It was modest.
Safe.
But when I returned to the pool, Daniel was already in the water, floating on his back with his eyes closed, face tilted toward the sun. He looked serene, powerful, beautiful. He didn't hear me approach, not until I stepped into the shallow end and gasped at the chill. His eyes snapped open, and he turned toward me. His expression shifted instantly, light teasing replaced by something darker, more focused. "You came back," he said. "I said I would. You look amazing." I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of every exposed inch of skin. "It's just a swimsuit." "No," he said, his voice quieter now. "It's not." The air around us thickened. I moved deeper into the water, letting it rise around my waist, my chest, until it gave me the illusion of safety. He watched me the entire time. I tried to act normal, to distract from the energy pulsing between us. "So, what's this party entail?" I asked. He smiled again, but this time there was something unreadable behind it. "Whatever you want it to." I reached for a pool noodle, hoping for lightness, distraction. "How about a race?" He chuckled. "You'll lose." "Try me." And just like that, we were splashing, swimming, racing from one end to the other. The tension gave way to laughter, the strange weight lifting just enough to let us breathe again. But it was there, beneath the surface. Always. When we finally collapsed at the pool's edge, both panting and soaked, he turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered too long. I didn't move away. He didn't speak. And I didn't know if I was terrified or thrilled. His fingers brushed a drop of water from my shoulder, slow, deliberate. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, the world stood still. I saw it in his expression, hesitation, desire, and something achingly tender. He was about to touch me again, and this time it wasn't a joke, wasn't innocent. It was real. But just behind him, across the wooden fence, the neighbor's window loomed. The curtain twitched. I panicked, my breath catching. "Daniel," I whispered quickly, stepping back. "The neighbors. There by the window." He blinked, startled. Then, as if I had just reminded him we were on a stage, he gave a sudden, exaggerated laugh and raised his hands like a guilty child. "What?" he said, voice louder now, playful. "I was just about to splash you again." He bent and flicked some water at my knee, giving a show of lightheartedness. I smiled thinly, playing along, though my heart was pounding. That look in his eyes, that wasn't play. It took every ounce of control to gather myself. "I'm going to make us some cocktails," I said, stepping out of the water, wrapping a towel around myself like armor. "You want the usual?" "Surprise me," he called out, his voice still light. But as I walked away, I could feel it, his eyes on my back, tracing every movement beneath the damp towel. I didn't dare turn around. Inside, the house felt too quiet compared to the poolside laughter. I stepped into the kitchen, breathing slower, trying to gather my thoughts. What was I doing? What were we doing? I opened the freezer and reached for the ice cubes, the cold bite of them grounding me in the moment. The kitchen tiles were warm under my feet, the sun now slanting in at just the right angle to illuminate the room in a soft, golden haze. I placed the cubes into a shaker and reached for the bottle of white rum. Then I heard the door behind me creak open. I didn't turn, but I knew. He entered the kitchen slowly, barefoot, silent. I could sense him before I saw him, his heat, his presence, the shift in the air. And then I felt him. He stepped up behind me, close enough that I could feel the dampness of his skin against the back of my neck. My breath caught. "Smells like mint and lime," he murmured, his voice low and warm. I turned slowly, unable to stop myself. His eyes were on mine, intense and unreadable. He reached past me, toward the counter, and picked up one of the ice cubes with his fingers. He held it between us, the tiny cube glistening in the sunlight, cold droplets running down his wrist. Then, without breaking eye contact, he lifted the cube to my lips. I froze. His gaze never wavered. He watched me like I was something sacred, something fragile. His hand was steady, his touch careful. I parted my lips slightly, just enough to let the ice rest against them. The cold stung. My lips tingled. He didn't say a word.
He just looked at me.
I took the ice gently between my teeth, shivering from the cold, or maybe from him. He smiled then, just slightly, like he was proud of something I hadn't fully understood yet. "You always looked incredible in black," he said quietly, his eyes flicking down and back up again. "I never told you that before." I swallowed the ice slowly, letting the cold distract me from the heat flooding every corner of my chest. "You shouldn't say things like that," I whispered. "Why?" he asked. "Is it not true?" His voice wasn't challenging. It was curious. Honest. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He stepped back just enough to let the moment breathe. Then he reached behind me and picked up a second glass from the drying rack, placing it beside mine. "Want me to muddle the mint?" he asked, casual again, as if the last 2 minutes hadn't happened. I nodded, my hands shaking slightly as I added rum to the shaker. He worked beside me in silence, his fingers deft and familiar. The only sound was the gentle clink of metal against glass. The quiet between us felt like a thread pulled tight. One more tug, and it might snap. We finished the drinks, and he handed me my glass, our fingers brushing. "To summer," he said, raising his glass. I nodded, unable to speak. Our glasses touched with a soft clink, and I took a long sip, letting the cold flavor wash over the heat in my throat. But even the mint and lime couldn't cool what was burning inside me. We sipped our cocktails slowly, the air thick between us despite the sweetness of the drink. Outside, the pool shimmered under the midday sun, and birds chirped carelessly from distant trees, as if the world hadn't tilted on its axis. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching me without saying much. Then he tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly.
"Come on," he said.
"Let's get some sun." But away from the neighbors' windows this time. There was something mischievous in his tone, but also something serious, protective, like he was creating a space that belonged only to us. I followed him out back, through the side path of the house, past the ivy-covered fence to the far end of the yard where the hedges grew taller, denser. The sun poured through a gap in the leaves like a spotlight, painting the grass in warm gold. It was quiet here, hidden, safe. Daniel laid out the loungers without a word and placed the bottle of sunscreen beside mine. I watched him as he dropped his towel, his skin still damp from the pool. Then he turned to me, holding the bottle, an unspoken question in his eyes.
"Let me," he said.
I hesitated but nodded. He stepped behind me and squeezed a cool line of lotion along my shoulders. I shivered, the sensation sharp and sudden, and then his hands began to move. Slow, careful. His fingers spread the lotion with feather-light pressure, tracing the curve of my shoulder blades, down the length of my back. I could feel the tension between us pulsing like a second heartbeat. When his hands reached my lower back, he paused. His breath was steady, but I felt it just a little closer than necessary. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," I whispered. I lay down then, letting the warmth of the sun distract me. After a moment, I reached for the bottle and turned to him. "Your turn." He nodded and sat beside me. His skin was warm beneath my hands as I rubbed the lotion into his shoulders, his arms, his chest. My touch was careful at first, but his body didn't flinch, didn't retreat. He trusted me. As I reached his stomach, my hand slowed. The lotion glistened on his skin. I traced the line just above his waistband, not meaning to hesitate, but I did.
And he noticed.
He froze, completely still, like a deer in the crosshairs. I could feel the change in the air, the subtle shift from relaxed to alert. His muscles tensed beneath my fingertips. I looked up. His eyes met mine. He didn't move. Neither did I. For a moment, the world fell away. No pool, no house, no history. Just this moment suspended in the heat and the quiet and the weight of everything we weren't supposed to feel. I began, pulling my hand away. But he caught my wrist, gently, not forceful. His grip was soft, questioning. I stared at our joined hands, the way our skin touched, as if it had always been this way. And yet, we both knew what it meant, what it could mean. He let go a second later, almost as if he regretted it, and leaned back on his elbows, looking up at the sky. "Sorry," he said, almost too lightly. "Guess I forgot how ticklish I am there." I exhaled slowly, retreating to my own lounger, unsure if I was relieved or disappointed. "Ticklish," I repeated with a weak smile. But neither of us laughed. We lay side by side in silence, the sun warming our skin, but the fire between us burning from something far deeper. And far more dangerous. Our deck chairs sat so close, our arms could have brushed with the slightest shift. The sun beat down gently, casting shadows from the hedge that flickered like whispers between us. I told myself to close my eyes, to rest, to let this charged silence dissolve into the heat of the afternoon. But I couldn't stop watching him. Daniel lay still beside me, his chest rising and falling slowly. His gaze was turned toward the sky, but I saw the way his fingers tapped anxiously on the fabric of the lounger, restless, uncertain. Then he turned, and without a word, Without warning, he leaned in. His lips found mine, quick, soft, desperate. My breath caught. It was the briefest kiss, but it shattered the world. He pulled back instantly, eyes wide, breath held like he'd stepped too close to the edge of a cliff and realized too late how far he'd gone. He looked at me, searching my face for something. Fear, rejection, regret. I didn't give him anything. I couldn't. Instead, I reached for my cocktail glass and swallowed the rest in a single gulp. The lime burned, the ice bit, and my heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. Then I turned to him, lifted the edge of my towel, and covered both of our heads. The world dimmed, muffled by the soft fabric. We were hidden from the sun, the sky, the house, the neighbors, everything. Just the two of us, in a world of cloth and breath. And I kissed him. I kissed him like I'd been holding my breath for years and had finally found air. There was no hesitation, no carefulness. I pressed my lips to his with the kind of hunger I had buried for so long it had started to rot inside me. He gasped softly, surprised, but only for a second. Then his hands found my face, anchoring me, grounding me in the moment we had both tried so hard to deny. It was warm under the towel, stifling. Our breaths mingled, rapid and uneven. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. I didn't know where this was going or how we'd come back from it. I just knew I couldn't stop. Not now.